I'm Edwin Payne. This is Charles Rowland. As you no doubt know, we are the Dead Boy Detective Agency.
This is Charles Rowland, and this is Edwin Payne, and together they are the Dead Boy Detectives. These boys have been on Earth for a very, very long time, all thanks to their supernatural existence, and during this time, they have honed their magical and investigative skills to become the best in the business. They run a detective agency, but just for ghosts, so if you are alive and kicking, you gotta find someone else to solve that mystery for you. These DC Comics characters were created by Neil Gaiman for his Sandman universe in the 90s, who became extremely popular on their own, resulting in several standalone comics and now a TV show. In this video, we will tell you all about Charles and Edwin's backstories, ghost powers, and supernatural anatomy, which make them such a dynamic duo on the paranormal plane. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
My smile is pretty convincing.
How Edwin and Charles were introduced into Sandman comics. Charles Rowland and Edwin Payne made their first comic book appearance in Neil Gaiman's The Sandman issue number 25 back in 1991. Charles is introduced as a lonely student of St. Hilarions all-boys school who did not return home for the Christmas holidays because his dad was in Kuwait for work. This is in the year 1990, and Charles has already been at school for a year and a half. He hated school and was desperate to meet his dad, who was a rather busy architect with no time for his son. Meanwhile, in the Sandman comics, it is around this time that Lucifer abandoned hell and all the evil spirits and demons descended upon Earth. This included the three boys who had murdered Edwin Payne in 1916. These boys have returned to torment St. Hilarion as ghosts and zero in on Edwin as their new prey. With a monster mayhem going on in school, the ghost headmaster of St. Hilarion forced the students to take a dip in the cold lake water, which put Charles in a state of hypothermia. Starving, he stepped into the kitchen looking for food, where he encountered the three evil ghost boys who burned his back and left him to die. Charles was saved by the ghost of Edwin, who carried the injured Charles all the way to the attic, where he finally succumbed to death. When Death arrived to take him to the afterlife, Charles argued with her and managed to strike a deal. Death agreed that Charles can hang out with Edwin till the time Death remains busy returning the rogue spirits to hell. After that, Charles is all hers. This brings us to Edwin's death. He was killed by the same three murderous boys over 70 years ago. The bullies offered Edwin as a sacrifice to the devil, and it was a rather gory ritual. Guided by actual occult practice books, they drank Edwin's blood during the sacrificial ritual and later hid his bones in the closet. Accepting the sacrifice, the devil's minions dragged Edwin into hell, where he remained for over 7 decades, till he finally managed to escape. Edwin returned to St. Hilarions, where he met a dying Charles and instantly befriended him. Edwin and Charles are just 13-year-olds in the comics who bond over their shared trauma of death and became best buds forever. However, they do not start their detective agency right away. That happens in their next appearance in the Children's Crusade comic book series, published between 1993 and 1994. Gaiman reintroduced Edwin and Charles by naming them as the Dead Boy Detectives. In this storyline, the Dead Boy Detectives have set up shop as private investigators, with their expertise rooted in mystery novels and movies. Their first case was to investigate the disappearance of kids from the town of Flaxdown. Subsequently, the Dead Boy Detectives appear in a short story of the Books of Magic series, and they get their own standalone miniseries titled Sandman Presents The Dead Boy Detectives by writer Ed Brubaker. In 2005, Edwin and Charles were the stars of the manga-styled graphic novel The Dead Boy Detectives, created by Jill Thompson. The characters returned in the Sandman Universe initiative and featured in a 6-issue limited series comics between 2022 and 2023.
Allow me to welcome you to the Dead Boy Detective Agency.
Who are the Dead Boy Detectives in the Netflix show? Netflix's Dead Boy Detectives marks Charles Rowland and Edwin Payne's on-screen debut. In the show, they retained their comic book origins, with just a few tweaks. Edwin is a nerdy and reserved teen ghost from the early 1900s, while Charles is his punk and impulsive bestie from the 1980s. Edwin went to the same St. Hilarion school in London, where he mostly kept to himself, burying his head in comics. One of his classmates, Simon, wanted to befriend Edwin, but being an introvert, he rejected the the offer, which left Simon angry and embarrassed. Later that night, Simon procured a book of dark magic from his brother and called upon his gang of friends to perform a mock sacrificial ritual with Edwin as the bait. Edwin was kept tied to the table while others read out the incantations solely to scare Edwin. However, what they thought was a mock ritual turned out to be an effective one, as it summoned forth the demon Saal. In an instant, Saal killed the other boys and dragged Edwin to hell because he was the gift that was promised. This was in 1916. Since then, Edwin remained in hell for over 70 long years, after which he finally managed to escape the netherworld and return to the land of the living. Upon his return, Edwin's ghosts arrived at St. Hilarion, where he met Charles in the attic. Just like in the comics, the show version of Charles was also bullied to death, just slightly differently. One fine day at school, Charles saved a boy from being beaten up by a bunch of guys who took offense and made Charles their next target. From how the events unfold, it seems that Charles was tossed into a frozen lake near the school by the bullies. When Charles floated up on the surface for air, he was prevented from coming out of the water by tossing stones at him. He somehow managed to flee the situation and hide in a deserted school attic to avoid being bullied any further. Owing to hypothermia and internal injuries, Charles was almost dead while hiding in the attic, and this near-death state enabled him to see ghosts. That's how he could see the ghost of Edwin, who kept him company till Charles actually died and became a ghost. It is at this time that Edwin informed Charles about the next step of being dead. Death will come and take him into the afterlife. However, Edwin must escape before death's arrival. Otherwise, she will drag him back to hell. But Charles was in no mood to give up his newfound friendship and decided to stay back on Earth with Edwin to live out their teenage life as ghosts. Thus, the duo begin running from death, something which they do all throughout Season 1. Out of the goodness of their hearts, Charles and Edwin decide to start a detective agency for ghost clients and begin to solve supernatural mysteries. They wanted to help the ghosts pass into the afterlife who are stuck on the plane of the living for the lack of closure or because of technical glitches. How does the Dead Boy Detectives at Ghost Anatomy work? In the comics, Edwin and Charles died at the age of 13, while in the Netflix show, they are slightly older mid-teenagers. Now, the supernatural world is guided by some rules, and one of them is that ghosts do not age. Thus, the show version of the Dead Boys Detectives will remain 16-year-olds forever. In the St. Hilarion's attic, Edwin briefed Charles on the many perks of being a ghost and how their supernatural anatomy enables them to perform some pretty cool feats, such as Edwin and Charles are intangible and invisible to humans. They cannot be seen and cannot be touched or felt by regular humans. Only those who have had near-death experience can see ghosts, which explains why Nico is able to see the detective boys after almost getting killed by the parasitic dandelion sprites. Crystal is also able to see the ghost boys owing to her psychic abilities, and so can the other supernatural beings such as the immortal witch Esther and the shapeshifter Cat King. Interestingly, Edwin and Charles are visible to humans when they assume their go-to disguises. Edwin becomes an aged lady while Charles turns into an aged man, and they are able to do this in the blink of an eye. The nature of their jobs requires the detective boys to interact with the living, and hence they resort to this temporary transformation. Owing to their non-physical structure, the ghost boys can pass through walls and doors with ease, and can even fall through floors, but only if they choose to do so. They can also touch or move objects, it's just that they cannot feel them. In fact, after Charles and Crystal shared their first kiss, Charles admitted that he didn't really feel anything. Edwin and Charles' ghost anatomy allows them to travel by supernatural means. For example, the detective boys are adept at mirror teleportation. They can walk into a mirror in Port Townsend and walk out of another in London. That's how they paid so many visits to their London office while investigating the paranormal cases miles away in Port Townsend. Charles's mirror manipulating abilities extended beyond just travel, as on one occasion, he was seen transforming a mirror into a window to another location. He uses this technique once a week to watch his aging parents. The ghost boys can also possess whoever they want, but they strictly avoid this. That's because possessing someone alerts the afterlife lost and found department of their whereabouts, and because they are fleeing death and have refused to move on into the afterlife, it's best that they remain undetected. Rule breaker Charles does possess Esther the witch for a brief while, but only to restrain her from attacking his buddies, and this process ends up notifying the afterlife department strength and sets the night nurse on their trail. The detective duo can also summon spirits through various methods. One of them is by ringing a silver bell to call upon the spirit of someone who took their own life. All said and done, the Dead Boy Detectives' biggest strength is their investigative senses and that awe-inspiring library that houses volumes and volumes of books on paranormal oddities, supernatural parasites, and spooky monsters. Edwin is the brain of the whole operation, while Charles is the brawn. While Edwin's intelligence enables him to theorize his way out of the problem, Charles is forever ready to fish out his magic bat or the enchanted sword from his bag of tricks to strike his enemies. Charles' bag is explained as a pocket universe that contains anything and everything that's needed to ward off evil. Locating objects inside the bag is a skill that Charles has mastered over the years. Charles used his magic bat as a boomerang to break David the Demon's hold on Crystal, also used the sword to finish off Esther's bloodthirsty pet snake. Meanwhile, Edwin is also a master of magic. He uses the binding spell on a cat during an interrogation and irks the Cat King in the process. Yep, Edwin and Charles can talk to cats. Edwin is also an expert alchemist who created a purple concoction to kill the forest elemental spore colony in the woods. Having survived hell, Edwin is also extremely knowledgeable about demons and occult practices. Can the Dead Boy Detectives be killed again? Owing to their non-physical anatomy, ghosts cannot be killed again, but their existence can be wiped out from the supernatural plane through some deadly means, such as the forest elementals can feed off their energy and cause the ghosts to be obliterated forever. Attacked by the elementals, ghosts can't die again, but they are consumed for their energy, resulting in instant and irreversible elimination. Like Charles says, any ghost a forest elemental eats is completely obliterated. No afterlife, no reincarnation, just empty, dark nothing. They would just perish in the darkness without a chance to move into the afterlife, and no afterlife is the worst thing that can happen to a ghost. Another way that ghosts can be wiped out of the spiritual plane is by getting stuck in a paranormal time loop that is about to explode. Esther also hatched a torturous plan to put an end to the detective boys forever. She devised a pain-extracting machine that turns one's trauma into a powerful magic potion. Esther planned to torture Edwin forever with a machine for a never-ending supply of pain and a potion which would grant her immense magical powers. What are the weaknesses of the Dead Boy Detectives? Despite their powers and abilities, the Dead Boy Detectives are not immune to supernatural attacks. They may be intangible in the mortal world, but fellow ghosts and paranormal creatures can harm the teen boys. The spider from hell leaves Edwin with a bloody face, while the skeletons in the dandelion woods manage to get hold of Charles. Also, in the creeping forest, the mushroom-shaped forest elemental had both the boys tangled in its tentacles. These forest elementals are particularly dangerous to ghosts, as they can eat them up without leaving a trace. The dead boys can be burnt by iron, which forces them to turn solid for a while. Esther managed to deliver burning wounds to Edwin and Charles, and also kept Charles locked up with an iron collar. The ghost boys are also not immune to the Cat King's magic. Cat King had a few tricks up his sleeves as a powerful shapeshifter and cat spirit. He casts a caging spell on Edwin, which prevented him from traversing through mirrors. While Edwin could peek through the mirrors into his London office, he couldn't completely exit the mirror because of the spell. The ghost boys also couldn't lock their minds against the night nurse's psychic abilities. She was able to infiltrate Charles' mind and make him relive terrifying memories. While no other villain managed to really one-up the detective boys, Esther managed to gain the upper hand on several occasions. The boys didn't really stand a chance against her magic, which reduced them to two glowing orbs locked in a glass jar.
That's not that bad though.
In the comics, the Dead Boy Detectives are equipped with more powers, such as the ability to fly and to leave their ghost bodies for astral projections. While we're yet to see all that happen in the show, the boys have indeed left a mark with their super cool powers in their Season 1 adventures. With the Night Nurse officially joining their team and Crystal Palace as a full-time employee, the Dead Boy Detectives will return all the more powerful in the next season. Well, that is it for today, people. We hope you liked our video. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and watch this space for more Dead Boy Detectives content. We'll see you super soon.
If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.